What's going What's going on off the record, listeners? Today we've got another news update for you. Got three bands, one local at the end. If you've been paying attention, and I've been covering the Heading East Records artists this week because they're playing a festival April 19th in Philadelphia. We'll have more information about that at the end of the show. But let's get into the nitty gritty. So, first band, we have Jimmy Eat World. If you're not familiar with them, you've probably been sleeping your whole life. So, we're going to put the spotlight on the band that's basically a soundtrack to every emotionally charged mixtape for the early 2000s. Jimmy Eat World. What's going on off the record, listeners? Today we've got another news update for you. Got three bands, one local at the end, if you've been paying attention. 1 second. And I've been covering the Heading East record. My bad, guys. Learning how to run this stuff. Alright, so getting into Jimmy World. So that's right. The Arizona kings of emo, alt-rock, and sheer heartfelt anthems. Let's dive into the rise, the records, and the resilience. And the raw honesty that keeps this band so beloved. So, early days in their formation, let's rewind a little bit. Mesa, Arizona, 1993. Four dudes, Jim Atkins, Tom Linton, Rick Birch, and Zach Lind come together as high school kids with a big dream and even bigger guitar amps. They started out punky, a little noisy, kind of raw. Imagine if early Green Day had a poetry phase. Their early records, especially the self-titled and Static Prevails, were more experimental, balancing post-hardcore textures with melody. We'll get into those albums. So, now Jimmy World didn't blow up overnight. This was the band that put in the work. No TikTok shortcuts, no viral luck, just basement shows, word of mouth, and elbow grease. That is a 90s band right there. So, let's talk about their breakthrough with Clarity. So when 1999 rolls around and boom, Clarity comes out, this is the cult classic album by them. The underground emo Bible. It didn't sell millions of copies overnight, but man, it mattered. Lush, emotional, layered, and it was emo's coming of age moment. Songs like For Me This Is Heaven and Lucky, Denver Mint hit you right in the chest. Critics still point to Clarity as a blueprint for modern emo and indie rock. And even though it got dropped by Capitol Records, because, well, the music biz can be heartless, especially in the 90s, it laid the foundation for what came next. Now, if you're old enough, I heard Jimmy Eat World when I went to college. My roommate was really into them. He's like, listen, I see what you're listening to. Listen to this album, Clarity. And it was right when Bleed America came out. This was 2001, and we're going to get into that album right now. They were an amazing band that came out. They were killing it on the radio then. So let's talk about the album that changed everything. Bleed America, released in 2001. It was just weeks before 9/11. The title was actually changed from Jimmy Eat World, from just Jimmy Eat World for a bit because of the sensitivity around the attacks. But regardless of what you call it, this was their moment. So songs like Sweetness, A Praise Chorus, Bleed American, and of course the song The Middle, which you've heard every cover band cover, including Sunblind, even though we're not a cover band. You couldn't escape that tune. It just takes some time, little girl. You're in the middle of the ride. So come on. It was everywhere. Radio, MTV, movie trailers, teen dramas. It was one of those rare tracks that's just pure and unfiltered with joy. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the way it was written, kind of like a Weezer formula a little bit. Only Jim Atkins has that wicked solo that Weezer's really good, but that he's a really good guitar player. So that song saved people, legit. It was about self-worth, about hanging in there when the world's a mess. And for that generation growing up post 9/11, in an age of dial-up, loneliness, AIM, away messages, this album just really hit different. And I think that has to do with all the hard work this band did to put that album out. So the continued evolution. So some bands might get lazy after a mega hit, but Jimmy Eat World, they just kept pushing. In 2004, they put out the album Futures, which was darker, deeper, and a lot more mature. The song Pain brought the grit to the radios. The song 23, a slow burn, emotional, gut punching that just might be one of their best songs ever. And the song Work, well, that was college radio gold back then. Every radio station was playing that song. So then Chase This Light came out in 2007. It brought them back to a brighter, poppier territory with songs like Big Casino, which felt like a victory lap for them. This was a band that was still evolving, still curious, and they never really chased trends. They just stayed true to their sound. I actually got to see them, I want to say it was 2001 with the Juliana Theory, and I can't remember the third band. It was a bigger band than the Juliana Theory, and they were playing in it was like Altoona, Pennsylvania. It was literally a rodeo stadium, and we were in the bleachers, the area where all the performances go on, like for the rodeo, was clear, and then there was a stage on the other side, and they played all Bleed America. They played Clarity. It was an amazing concert. There were maybe like 100 people there. It was funny because they were just coming out with that album with The Middle, and people knew who they were, but they weren't really catching on with those ticket sales yet all over the nation. So I'm really lucky to have gotten to see them before they really blew up. So the Thinking Man's emo. Let's just pause for a second, because Jimmy World doesn't always get credit for how smart they are. These lyrics, they hold up. Jim Atkins writes with empathy, vulnerability, and precision. There's no toxic masculinity in his lyrics. There's reflection and there's humility. And musically, they thread that like a perfect needle. But intricate, catchy, and just never shallow. They're like a band you bring home to meet your parents. If your parents are into Sonic Youth and Springsteen. Your parents are probably into Springsteen. So ups, downs, and the staying power. Every band hits a lull. Yeah, albums like Invented in 2010 and Damage in 2013 didn't get the same attention as their earlier albums. But even their lesser records have gems. Heart is Hard to Find. It's a great track. I Will Steal You Back. Book of Love. These are songs by a band that never forgot how to feel with their lyrics. And then, boom, 2016, Integrity Blues. So, critics came back around. The single, Sure and Certain, was infectious. The song You Are Free sounded like a call to arms for anyone stuck in their own head. And if you haven't been stuck in your own head, you're not living. Their 2019 album, Surviving, pushed even harder. Tight, punchy, confident. These guys are lifers. They're not coasting. They're carving. So, live shows and fan connections. If you haven't seen Jimmy Eat World live, you know that they don't phone it in. It's tight. It's emotional. Jim Atkins' voice has aged like wine. Still soaring. Still honest. And fans, they're lifelong. Because Jimmy Eat World isn't a moment. It's a feeling. they were there when you got dumped, almost. When you passed your driving tests, when you made it through that awful job that you hated working. Their music means something to the people that listen to it. So, closing thoughts on Jimmy Eat World. They are more than just the middle. They are architects of a sound that shaped generations. They bridged punk hearts with pop hooks, emo soul with a rock ambition. They did it without ego, without drama, without selling out. In a world where bands come and go, Jimmy Eat World just kept going, quietly, earnestly, brilliantly. So whether you're discovering clarity or blasting through Bleed American or finding meaning in their newer work, Jimmy Eat World is proof that staying true to yourself will always be louder than chasing what's cool. That's the story of Jimmy Eat World, guys. Definitely, if you haven't listened to their albums, I would absolutely jump into Clarity. It is a very different album. It's definitely almost the instructions to the early emo music. It's a great album. I might actually cover a news segment about how they filmed or how they recorded the album Bleed American, because there was a lot around that. They were dropped from their label, and I remember reading that they actually took money that they had made from their tours, touring on Clarity for the last couple of years, and they hired the producer for that album, and they went in and they basically were just like nose to the grindstone working on Bleed American. And I remember the producer would send clips to the record labels, and everybody was chomping at the bit to hear that album. And they really made them all wait until they came to them with, hey, this is a record deal we want. Whoever's going to offer it to us is going to get us. So I'll do a news segment on that at some point. It was really interesting how they really tackled the issues that were going on for bands with record labels at that early 2000s time. The 90s CD sales were up to $20. The record labels were just taking all the money from these guys. Most people got less than $1 for their record sale, and they were being charged. People were being charged $18 for a CD. So we'll get into that at a later point. So this second band is a band that I got to see in 2018 in Philadelphia, right next to the Electric Factory. I don't know what it's called now, but it's the smaller venue that's attached to that building. So let's see. Get into this. So let's take a deep dive into a band that's been shaking it up with post-hardcore and emo revival in the scene since they hit the ground running in the mid 2010s. That's right, we're talking about the band Movements. A band that wears their heart on their sleeve and turns emotional turbulence into sonic gold tunes. So, Movements formed in 2015 out of Rancho Santa Margarita, California. I did not know that was the name of a town. That's awesome. Sunshine, palm trees, and a whole lot of feelings. The band consists of lead singer Patrick Miranda, guitarist Ira George, and Spencer York on drums, and Austin Creasy holding it down on bass. Now, from the jump, this band didn't come to play. They came to feel. Their debut EP, Outgrown Things, dropped in 2016 on Fearless Records. And it was clear from the jump that they were tapped into something honest, raw, and emotionally gripping. That EP is really good, guys. If you listen to any of their stuff, go back and listen to that EP. It's a little bit more grungy. It's a little bit, it's not as poppy, but it is. There are some killer tracks on that. I got to see them play that album. It was awesome. So Movement sound is a perfect blend of post-hardcore energy, emo confessionals, and a little bit of spoken word poetry that feels like the pages were torn out from someone's diary. Think balance and composure meets La Dispute, but a lot cleaner around the edges and somehow even more intimate. So, breaking through with Feel Something. Let's talk about their 2017 debut full length album, Feel Something. That title couldn't be more accurate. This record hit listeners like a truck, but like a poetic, well written truck. So tracks like Colorblind, Daylily, and Deadly Dull tackled mental health, depression, loss, and quiet desperation of the daily life. But it wasn't just a sad boy music for the sake of it. There was purpose, there was connection. Movements weren't just writing songs, they were creating lifelines. The fans responded. The record took off. Critics praised it honestly. The band found themselves headlining bigger and bigger shows, playing to crowds who screamed back every lyric like it was gospel. I remember seeing people scream back their lyrics when they just were playing the EP. That everybody knew their stuff. It was a crowd of about 500 people. We're gonna get into that right now on who they were with. But yeah, the fans responded. The record took off. Critics praised it. The band found themselves headlining bigger and bigger shows. So, touring with Slaves. This was the tour that I was at. Now let's talk about something specific for this era. Movements on tour with Slaves in 2018. Now, this was right after Feel Something had made its mark, and Movements was getting more comfortable with bigger stages. That tour was a bit of a vibe shift. Slaves, now known as Rain City Drive, were coming off their own dramatic, historic, and sonic evolution. At that time, both bands were pushing forward despite personal and public obstacles. There was something compelling about seeing them on the same bill. Now, let me talk a little bit about what I saw happen. So, I show up to this venue. I knew all the opening bands. They were all local Philly bands that I've played shows with. I've gone to see them. And I got to meet the guys from Movements. I believe Fit for a King was on that. I met those guys. There were two or three other bigger bands that they were touring with, and it was Slaves. And at this point, they had Johnny Craig. If you know Johnny Craig, MacBook, you know the stories about him. This was when he was still really struggling with his addiction, and you could hear it in the vocals, in the lyrics, not the vocals. His voice was always gorgeous, amazing performer. Very sad listening to his lyrics. His lyrics were very much about his constant fight with addiction. It always was masked about love, but really, if you really saw him singing the emotion and you read the lyrics, you knew it was about him fighting addiction. And during this tour, he was absolutely losing that fight. I remember having a guy in the crowd who kind of bragged to me that he had his phone number and he was there and he brought him a present. So, after the show, I actually was called by the promoter, the band, I believe it was either the bassist or the guitarist of Movements, messaged me on Facebook. A couple of the other band's also members messaged me. They were looking for Johnny Craig. He went missing. So that tour, I believe Slaves kind of dropped off. That was the last tour Slaves played with Johnny Craig. Their new lead singer, the owner of our studio, Aiden, from the Lore Lodge, took vocal lessons and guitar lessons from him. So at some point I was promised to have him on. If not, I'm just going to troll him online. But that tour had moments of pure intensity. Movements with their slow burn catharsis provided an emotional anchor, while Slaves brought more and more melodic and hard-hitting dynamics. So fans got a little both of that introspection and the release of that full emotion with workout. So but also the moment where movements really proved they could stand shoulder to shoulder with established acts and commanding just as much attention, maybe even stealing the show on certain nights. I absolutely saw them steal a show. Everybody knew their lyrics. They were the first band to open from the tour. The local bands opened, but they were the first touring band to play, and everybody in the crowd knew their lyrics. I've never seen an opener start a show like that, and the whole crowd was just engulfed in their music. If you were at one of those dates, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There was pure magic to seeing them play on stage. They were right at the cusp of taking off. It was amazing to see them live. So let's fast forward to 2020. The pandemic hits. Everything changes, but Movements still drops their second album. No Good Left to Give. This was a darker, moodier, and more polished effort. They dug even deeper into themes of emotional fragility, heartbreak, and isolation, feeling like they were speaking directly to the moment. While the first album felt like a young man's cry for understanding, No Good Left to Give was the sound of someone sitting with their pain, trying to untangle it. It was definitely an introspective thought piece from Patrick. Sonically, they leveled up. Guitars got denser, rhythms more spacious, and Pat's vocal delivery even more dynamic. He swings between whispered poetry, full-throated desperation like it's nothing. You felt every word that he sang. Let's get into their live show. Here's the thing. Movements might be emotional and introspective, but their live shows, nothing short of powerful. There's this unspoken communication that happens when they play. It's not about flashy lights or big stage antics. It's about the lyrics, the connection, the shared experience of that crowd. When the band hits that first note, it's like everyone in the room just breathes out at once. Whether it's your favorite, like Kept, which I believe might be from their first EP, or the newer cut Skin to Skin, which is a great song, the crowd was always in it with them. And Patrick, he's not just a singer, he's a storyteller, a conduit. He pulls you in and makes you feel seen, and somehow, without saying much in between songs, creates this sacred space for feeling everything. So, more recent moves and what's next for the band. In 2023, Movements gave us Ruckus, a slight pivot to that still holds on to their DNA. It's a little bit more aggressive at points, with tracks like Killing Time and songs like Tightrope, showing a punchier, grittier side to the band, but still feels like Movements. They're evolving, not abandoning their sound, exploring new terrain without losing the map, and fans are here for it. If Feel Something was the sound of finding yourself, Ruckus is about challenging yourself. It's about not sitting still, not accepting stasis. It's still poetic, still real, but with a little bit more bite. And it's exciting to watch them grow, take risks, and still hit people in the chest with every track. So closing thoughts, Movements isn't just a band. They are a bomb of overstimulation, a mirror of emotional burden, and a community of the ones who feel a little too much. From touring with Slaves to crafting some of the most honest records in modern alternative music, Movements has proven that they're not just passing through, they're here to stay. So if you're a longtime fan, you already know the power of their music. And if you're new to the world of Movements, buckle up. You're about to feel something. So, again, if you've paid attention to the show or watched any of the other news episodes, I like to give a shout out to a local band. These guys aren't from PA. I have seen them play in PA. I want to say it was 2019, maybe. I think I saw them play here in Phoenixville. But uh, this band we're diving into, uh, it's a band. They're an alt rock and emo revival band called Mighty Tortuga. So now, first of all, let's talk about their name, Mighty Tortuga. There's something kind of poetic about it. So it's a blend of strength and patience, slow and steady power. And honestly, that's kind of a perfect metaphor for the band's rise. They're not blowing things up overnight, they're building layer by layer, show by show, song by song, and it's been working for them. Who are they? Mighty Tortuga hails from Connecticut. Yeah, you heard that right. Connecticut might not be the first state that comes to mind when you think about big emotional anthems and alt rock energy, but these guys are putting it on the map in their own way. The band started to make waves in the late 2010s, and if you've been paying attention to the underground emo and pop punk scenes, you probably have seen their name popping up more and more. They've got that special something that sounds a sound that blends the vulnerability of the early 2000s emo with modern atmosphere and an atmospheric twist. It's raw, but it's polished. Melancholy, but hopeful. They're walking this really cool line between the past and the future of the genre. So let's get into their sound and style. Let's talk. Let's talk sound for a second. Imagine the emotional pull of bands like Jimmy World, paired with the moodiness of Turnover or the lush layering of bands like Movements. Mighty Tortuga lives in that in between space. Their guitars shimmer, vocals ache, the lyrics cut a little deeper than you'd expect. Their songwriting is full of self reflection. We're talking themes like longing, identity, emotional growth, romantic misfires, and the usual suspects of emo canon for sure. But they hit different with that in their hands. There's no gimmick. It's just real, honest storytelling, backed by tight musicianship and a clear sense of purpose from the band. What sets them apart as their attention to dynamics? They know when to pull back and let the moment breathe, and also when to let the band explode. They're not afraid of space, they're not afraid of subtlety, and that takes confidence. It takes intention. So let's talk about the scene they're in. Let's zoom in. Let's zoom out on for a second. Mighty Tortuga is part of a beautiful thing happening in the emo and alt rock scene right now. A lot of bands are ditching the old cliches and trying this new emotional terrain. Mighty Tortuga, they're thriving in that space. They're sharing stages with some major up and comers and doing regional tours, hitting the DIY circuit really hard. They've been building community of working with other bands and sharing resources, collaborating on content. It's not just about the music, it's about the ecosystem they're creating around their music. What I respect about them is how they've really stayed true to their artistic identity. No chasing trends, no genre hopping to catch a wave. They're developing their sound, letting the fans find them organically, and that's rare. That's why their fan base is starting to really stick. So let's talk about their releases. So if you haven't listened to their 2023 EP, The Plague Inside Your Head, that's your homework after this episode. The title alone, iconic, but the music, that's where it really gets you. That EP plays like a late night conversation with your younger self. It's introspective, but never self-pitying. It's chaotic, but never numb. It's got hooks that really stay with you, lyrics that hit at just the right angles, and production that's clean but not too sterile. So, one of the standout qualities of this release is its flow. It's an album I was listening to today, and it doesn't feel like a bunch of singles thrown together. It feels like a statement, a mood, a full emotional arc. And you can tell the band took their time with it. You can tell that they really cared about this album. They've also dropped some killer singles that show their range, some more upbeat, some more upbeat tracks. What's exciting is that they're not afraid of to experiment within their lane. They know what their sound is, but they're not trapped by it. If that makes sense to you. So here's the thing I love most about Mighty Tortuga. They make music for feelers. You know what I'm talking about. People who put on headphones not just to vibe, but to feel something real. They write for the folks that are navigating their 20s, trying to make sense of change, growth, heartbreak, and healing. There's something comforting about the way that they approach the pain. It's not just a performative piece. It's not wallowing. It's reflective. It's kind of like someone's holding up a mirror and saying, "Yeah, this part of life kind of sucks sometimes, but you're not alone in it." So they're a reminder that music doesn't always need to shout to make a point. Sometimes it just needs to sit with you. So what's next for this band? Honestly, the sky's the limit. They've got momentum right now. They've got a growing audience. They've got identity, and in the saturated scene, and that's the biggest asset that the band can have. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them on some big support tours soon. Maybe even heading out on their own headlining tour the next 1 or 2 years. I could also see them signing with a solid indie label that knows how to nurture this kind of thoughtful, emotional driven rock. They've got the foundation. Now it's just about staying consistent, staying connected, and trusting that slow burn. It's a powerful one for sure. So, yeah, if you're sleeping on Mighty Tortuga, this is your wake up call. Dive into the catalog, follow the journey, go to the shows, because when the bands, let me bring up their info. Because when this band levels up, I fully believe they will. You're going to want to say that you were at one of their shows before the world caught on. So make sure you check them out. And again, they are playing the Heading East Records Festival this coming Saturday in Philadelphia with The Color Fred, Umora, My Cousin's Girlfriend's House, Sleep Cycles, who we talked about yesterday, Lolito, again, Mighty Tortuga, Winter Forever, and Challenger. So this is today's episode. If you've been following, thank you very much. Make sure you subscribe, share it with a friend or a musician, and definitely comment down below and let us know what you think of the show, what you want us to cover, and if you have any friends that we should cover, any big